Hey guys, so thanks for joining me. I just wanted to give you guys some pointers on finding a counselor or therapist. And that word, first of all, is interchangeable. So don't get tripped up on if this person is a counselor versus a therapist. What's the difference? Now, there can be different levels of counselors out there with different levels of training and education and things, and I'll touch on that later. But as far as that word, it's really interchangeable, just kind of a preference thing, I think. Um, but I just wanted to give you some advice, some suggestions, things to consider. No, also things to know ahead of time of like what you should expect in the process, and if what maybe you shouldn't be expecting, and if that's happening, that might be concerning. Just because like anything else out there, there are some really good therapists and that you're going to get a lot out of the process, and then there's others that maybe aren't such a good fit. And some of that can just be like their skill set doesn't match your needs, and that's another thing to think about. And before I get into all that, though, I wanted to also say, like, address the question of, like, who needs therapy. And I would suggest that you just ask yourself this question to kind of assess, do I need counseling or therapy? And it would be, am I human? If you're human, if the answer is yes, then I would say, yes, you need it. I might be biased, but, but seriously, though, I feel like at least at some point in our life anyway, pretty much I feel like everyone, I not pretty much, I feel everyone can use it, honestly. If you find the right fit, it can be a wonderful thing, a great support. How much you're going to need and how much support, that varies. You might not need long term. A lot of people don't, hopefully they're getting a lot out of it and change is happening. um, but it also depends on the needs and the struggles and the challenges they're facing too. So you might just need it for a season. So it's something that I really want people to open their minds to and just consider that you don't have to have a quote unquote mental illness um, per se to benefit from it. um, you can be going through a life transition and it's just overwhelming you and you're feeling like it's taking you outside your normal threshold of what you're used to handling. It can be just something like that. It can be a loss. It can be all kinds of things. Sometimes even like good transitions, like positive, there's a thing called positive stress. And even that sometimes throws us off enough that just having somebody to process through it, to give you some feedback, help you to kind of broaden your perspective, your viewpoint, because when we're in it, we can get kind of lost. It's really hard to get a clear perspective. I kind of use the example for people like, if I held a piece of paper up to you like this and asked you to read it, would you be able to? No. Why? Because you can't focus your eyes on it. It's too close, right? And that's how it is for a lot of our personal stuff and a lot of our emotional things. And that's true for me as a counselor. That's the other thing. When I say everybody, I mean everybody. It is to me, I think it's a good sign if you find a counselor that also gets their own counseling. Some of my clients were shocked to hear me share that, but then it was very validating and encouraging. They said to realize that because they just never considered that I would be having my own counselor. Um, there doesn't have to be anything quote unquote wrong with you to need this and to get some benefit out of it. So anyway, I'll get off that soapbox, but I encourage you to consider it. Now, where to look is the next suggestion I'm going to give you. Like, there's lots of options out there. There's different sites. Like, one that I use is psychologytoday.com. So you can get on there. And what's nice about it is it's like a shopping process. So you can narrow your search, filter the search on things like location, specialties, if the person is male or female, all kinds of things. Insurance, of course. So you narrow it down to just see what is a good fit to start with. And then you are able then to look at their profile. So you see a picture of them. A lot of times it's a picture of their office space to help you like kind of prepare with what it might be like. They, in their own words, describe what they offer and how they offer it, how the kind of like gives you an idea of how they view humans basically, and how to work with other humans and what they might need to overcome their obstacles and stuff. So it gives you insight into their theoretical framework, basically, like their theory of how they look at things. We'll usually share about the techniques that they use. So if you don't know what those techniques are, I encourage you Google them, do a little bit of research so you know what it is that they're utilizing. And it's, when you're looking at specialties too, I really encourage people to be willing to ask questions. Like if it says, for instance, that they're specialized in trauma, you can ask them, what does that mean exactly? What's your training like? What's your experience like? How long have you been doing this? And what capacity have you been treating trauma survivors? That's important because, honestly, sometimes it might say that they specialize in something like that, and it's maybe an 8-hour training they took. Not judging that, but it's your right to understand the difference and to know the difference and to be able to determine, like, based on my experience and what I'm struggling with, do I think that's enough? And the way they're describing it, am I comfortable with that? Do I feel confident in what they're offering me? And it's okay if you don't. It's okay to be able to say, yeah, just, I think I'll have to pass for now and keep looking. You can get, pretty much everybody offers a free consultation. You can do that over the phone, ask them these questions, or sometimes people just schedule the intake. They come in, and that's kind of, I look at it anyway, and I try and encourage them to look at it as this assessment process. I'm assessing if this seems like a good fit, and I encourage my clients to do the same. And that's what I would suggest for you is, I think a lot of people get into this mindset, like their first appointment especially, they're nervous, they're concerned about being judged. What's this person going to think of me? What if I share this? What are they going to judge that? And it causes them to be less discerning in their spirit, to have a less discerning spirit going into it. And I really try to teach people that it is not only okay, but it's really best if you go into that thinking, okay, who is this counselor? Who is she? What's she about? What's she have to offer me? And does that make sense for me or not? And trying to get out of that like fear-based, anxious place of like, what's she gonna think of me? So I just encourage that as well, to take that perspective, because not everybody is cut from the same cloth, and that's how it should be. Really, there's a lot of people out there that I don't have the right skill set for, the right specialty for, the right experience, and that's okay. The other thing to think about too, like, I don't call myself a quote unquote Christian counselor just because I don't have, that's an area where when I advertise, I say that I am a Christian and I can include Christian principles into the process. But I don't have any specific training on how to provide actual Christian counseling. So I'm transparent about that, but it's also, I encourage you, even if you're not a strong believer, as long as you're not completely opposed to Christianity, I would encourage you to seek a Christian counselor, though. I would suggest that because they don't have to, for one, just because that's who they are, you can set the boundary that you don't want that brought into the session if you're not comfortable with that. If you're like not sure about this whole God thing, and is there a God, is there not, if you even have questions and you think maybe possibly there is, if there really is, wouldn't you like for the person who's guiding you and supporting you to be also guided and supported by the Lord? And if he's not real, if there really isn't a God, then what's it going to hurt if they're not bringing it literally into the session, right? Why does it matter? What is it really going to hurt that person prays about the session ahead of time? I don't think so. So I just ask you to think about that and consider being more open to that, because I've had clients that they don't want that brought into the session. Sometimes they've even had like some bad negative, past negative experiences, and they have given me the feedback that just being exposed to a Christian that they feel safe with, they feel supported, they don't feel judged, that alone has been very helpful and healing for them, because that's not what they've experienced in the past, and I respect their boundaries when they don't want any of that actually brought into the session outwardly. I, however, of course, pray about my clients before sessions, during sessions, inwardly often. That's my process. So if I'm like, how do I respond to this? I'm relying on the Lord, the Holy Spirit for that a lot of times. But I won't speak it. I won't push to pray if that's not what they want. So anyway, but it can go the other way too. I've heard a lot of feedback from people saying, well, I went to someone who's supposed to be a Christian counselor and they didn't incorporate it at all. For one, I'm always like, well, did you ask about that? Sometimes people struggle to be assertive in that way. But if it's a safe space and a safe person, you feel really comfortable with them, that should be an area where you can grow to be more assertive, where you can challenge yourself a little bit more to speak up. So it's something to consider. But yes, so sorry, just trying to not forget any pieces that I'm going to say about that. Yes, asking questions. And what to expect too in the process. I've had and heard different types of feedback. Like, I've had people too, like, and maybe you've done this, maybe you tried counseling, you're like, it didn't do anything. I don't get it. Like, it might not have been the right fit for one. And I've had clients who have said, like, I was working with a therapist or multiple sometimes over the years, and like, it's good at first, we have a good connection, they seem to understand me and support me, but then we just it just seems like we're just talking and I'm not making any changes. I didn't make a lot of progress. Like, this helped initially for a little bit, but then kind of fell off, not making any progress. So I stopped counseling for some time, and I'm finally trying again. A couple of things could be happening there. For one, the the relationship can sometimes, I don't know if the right word is expire, but run its course. And if you really are spending a long time with somebody, if you're working with them for years, that can be part of it. Sometimes too, there's just different approaches out there. Some people are really more talk therapy oriented, where they just, whatever you bring to session, they talk about it. They are good at reflecting back to you. They're good at supporting you, getting you to think of some things, maybe give some insights here and there, but that's generally what their process looks like. That might work for a little bit, and then you might notice you need more. So those are things that are really good to talk about in the beginning, even and to think about before you go in. What do I want? Do I want someone who that's primarily what they offer is talk therapy? Is that enough? Or not? And being able to recognize that beforehand, ask those questions. If it says that they use certain techniques, make sure that they actually use them on a regular basis, that it's not just something they've been trained in, but they typically fall back to talk therapy. And if that's the case, just talk to them about can we change this? Because like I said, I've heard that feedback a lot from a lot of people. And I tend to there's always some element of talk therapy, obviously, because you got to get to know each other and their story and everything. But I really like to kind of get to work, and there's different techniques that I use specifically that I see a lot of people benefiting from. I see a lot of change in their life. That excites me. But then sometimes I'll have clients where that they kind of are resistant to those things, that approach. And I kind of catch on. They just want to come in and they want to process it each week. And they get something out of it, and that's what they're happy with and what they want. So I adjust to that as well. If asking yourself, are you someone that needs tangible tools? Maybe some clients really like tangible homework. Let the person know, you're making their job easier by sharing what you recognize about yourself or what you think you might like in the process and what you won't. what you won't like. I always, first session, I explore that with clients of if they have had counseling in the past, what worked for you, what didn't make my job easier, right? It's kind of a shortcut to getting it right with them. But you got to be willing, you really got to be willing to open up and be honest and have direct communication with that person to get your needs met. The other thing is to look at what to expect. There should be good boundaries. And I know there's, like boundaries are kind of a gray area because there are some clear things in our profession that are spelled out that are violations. But then there's things that are just more, not necessarily a violation, but a boundary crossing, more gray area. And I tend to be a stickler for some pretty clear, strict personal boundaries with people. I find it's effective. I find they get the most out of it that way because here's the reason. If you go to your counselor and you're seeing them and you start realizing you know more about them than they maybe know about you even, there's just sharing details of their life, past experience. Um, in my opinion, my professional opinion, that's not a good thing. What it is doing is it's not just blurring the boundaries for you. Like that might feel good because you're like, oh, I feel safer because they're opening up to me as well. Well, the problem with that though is, for one, we should have an ability, like a skill in us to make people feel comfortable and safe. Like something about us and our approach with them and just our a presence too that just they know this without us having to divulge a bunch of personal stuff, you know um and when we're oversharing our stuff, we're kind of skipping it, we're kind of cheating in a sense. um and then also when we're doing that, it is blurring the lines for the counselor as well. What I mean by that is changing the relationship. If I'm sharing with you and then you're empathizing with me, then it starts to feel like a friendship to me. And the problem with that is then guess what? I gradually stop giving actual professional services. And what I'm doing is giving the same exact thing that your friends and your family give. I give you support, suggestions, guidance, whatever, based on my feelings. Because I'm feeling an emotional connection with you on a different level than I should be. I care about my clients, I really do. They're like awesome people. A lot of times I really look forward to seeing them. It's fun working with them, it's fun to see them grow. Um, but there's a line there because if I start sharing too much, and I try not to spend too much time on this because it's just hard for it to get people to understand this, I think. Um, they think it's cold if we don't open up that way, but, and I've had people tell me their experiences at times, like, saying their counselor, like, got mad at them over a decision they were making because they said, it just hurts me too much to hear you repeatedly returning to this situation that's bad for you. That is not a response you should be getting. If it's personally hurting that person too much, something's wrong there. And then when I talked more about this, I discovered, yes, this counselor was sharing what this person knew way too much about their counselor. And so that's what happens then, that it's like this, they're too emotionally invested in you and your life, that the lines start getting blurred, and then they're unable to be as patient as they could be otherwise with your decisions, even when they don't necessarily agree with them. Like I can gently hold up, like, and point out to clients, like, I'm noticing like this is a contradiction here, let's talk about that, without it. It's not like I just ignore, when they're about to make a decision that I'm sensing is probably going to be hurtful. We'll talk about it, but they're not feeling like it's impacting me. They're not going to feel guilty for making me feel bad or worried about them or like any of that. I'm not adding, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not adding more onto their plate and more pressure for them to be worried about me and my feelings, and it shouldn't be happening. So anyway, I'll get off that soapbox. But I hear that a lot, so that's why I wanted to share that. And again, it's a good idea if your counselor has their own counselor because it helps them to avoid doing these things. Now, I will say I do tend to share more if it's like spiritually based, testimony wise. I have found myself being more open that way, just because that is like a normal part of the Christian practice, really, is, but I don't share the same types of details about that testimony to the same extent necessarily all the time with my clients. If there's portions of it that are a little too personal, I'm mindful of that. But I do find myself talking about sharing an experience that I've had more when it comes to when they're a Christian, and I know that it would be powerful for them to see God's movement and see how amazing He was in this circumstance in my life and what I got from that process, what I learned about Him, and all of that. But anyway, so just be mindful, be aware that if you start sensing that happening, that's probably not great, and something to consider. So, let me see what else. How to get the most out of it. So, it's again, a lot of people don't know what to expect. They sometimes people come in and they just seem to naturally know, like, this is how we flow, and there's this natural flow to our process. Others, I think, that don't understand what's expected, and we have to work on that, because I think the expectation sometimes is like they just show up and look at you like, okay, now what? And it's not all on that counselor to say, this is what we're going to do. You need to bring things forward. And so as you openly share, like I have a lot of people the first session, some are more timid, but a lot are like just so happy to be like getting it out finally, that they will just kind of unload. And then they're just like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, oh, I just dumped on you and I just was all over the place. And I'm always reassuring them, even while they're doing it. I'm like, it's okay. I'm taking this in. I'm taking little notes here and there. Like, you're giving me information. It's going to be a minute or two. I need to get more information, more understanding, more life experiences, just hearing how you share this stuff, how you process it, how your brain works, like how you think about these things. Like, as they're doing that, it's teaching me a lot, and that's not a bad thing. Do I want that to look like that forever? No, because we want to start making some changes at some point. But for me anyway, my process looks like, and this isn't everybody's, but it looks, a good flow is when a client can come in and really just share a lot. But I will slow them down, and I'll bring them back to another point when I want to go deeper, or when I have more questions. I'm still in charge of guiding the process. But I'll do that for a bit, of letting them just kind of like give me all kinds of stuff. And I'm making little notes, and I'm thinking like my wheels are already spinning of like what direction we should go in and all of that. So, and to get the most out of it too, like some people think it's just I unload. It gives me a sense of relief. I leave, I come back the next week and do the same thing. Like I said, there are some that prefer that's just what they want to do. But that can also get you stuck in this process of just spinning your wheels and not making progress. Sometimes your counselor might just go with that. But if you want to see real change, what should be happening is when you come in, you share, but you're sharing things with intention. It's not just like every detail of your week that happened. It's throughout the week you were doing your homework. And it doesn't have to be tangible written homework. That's not really really my style a lot, unless somebody needs that. But it's more homework like processing what we talked about the last week, insights that were gained, those aha moments, and like working through it in a week, looking for these patterns that we've maybe identified, like that we talked about. Oh, there it is there. Oh, and then as that happens, and you can get more details, you can journal. Some people like doing that, and it's really helpful. So through the week, it's giving us some meat for the next session. Not just random, like, oh, and then I ran into traffic and that stressed me out a little bit. Like, it's not just rambling about your week. It's through the week looking for like, oh, this is important. I'm going to bring this up. And I need to process this. And I notice this feeling. that was more intense than it should be, or whatever it might be that you just took awareness of through the week. You don't just unload on session, leave it there, forget about it, come back and do the same thing next week. That, I mean, that can happen, but that if you want to see real change, you don't want that to get stuck in that process, okay? And so, and then just coming in and just expecting me to know what we should talk about all the time. Because I, at least, like I said, with my style, I will follow your flow and then use that to say, okay, now let's try this. I suggest this. Let's, throughout the week, try implementing this. Or here's a technique that I think would be really helpful for you. Hopefully this is all making sense. So, and then I just want to encourage you to realize, like I said, it can take time to find the right match. I encourage you not to give up. If you guys need help finding somebody, if you want some more feedback, suggestions, if you're reading some things on somebody's profile and you're confused by it and you want some clarity on some of the jargon, you can always reach out and I can help you with that as well. But I just hope that this encourages you, empowers you to have the courage to